Welcome to Chandu's TechNet. In this video, I will show you a real-time scenario where a database log file is full due to availability replica, right? Let's take a scenario where application team contacted you stating that their transactions are failing with log file full message, right? When you look into the SQL error log and you noticed the transaction log file is full due to availability replica. Let's jump into the server and understand and try to fix that issue, right? So I have two replicas, node 1, node 2, whereas I have configured a database and added database to the availability group. Let's consider DB1. Sorry, so AdventureWorks 2016, whatever it is. And my transaction log file is full for the database. And I notice like first one, to understand, so definitely you will be you would be able to see from the SQL error log the message like 9002 9/2, like those messages, it will be printed in the SQL error log, right? So once you see that transaction log file is full due to availability replica, first thing you will have to identify what is the current log file utilization for these databases. How you will see that? dbcc SQL perf log space. It tells you like what is the current log file utilization. What is the percentage of log file utilization? And if you notice, this database AdventureWorks 2016 ext is utilized, the utilized log file utilization is around 98%, right? 98%. And once you identify that it is utilize 98%, then you will have to see if you are, so the reason for not able to truncate the transaction log file. So when this percentage will be reduced, so as soon as the transaction log file is truncated, right? So as soon as the transaction log file is truncated, then log file utilization will be reduced and VLFs will be reused, right? So there are certain scenarios. If it is a full recovery model, you will have to take a log backup so that the log file will be truncated, right? So in this case, if anything it is waiting for, right? If the logs are, if it is log file is waiting for any other wait type, then the logs will not be truncated. Let's understand what it is waiting for. So how to validate that what it is waiting for? So we have a system catalog where we can query, select star from sys dot databases, system catalog sys dot databases to query and get the result, right? So it is system catalog, so where it executes on the master database. You don't need to change any database context, right? Log reuse wait description is the column to validate the current wait description of the particular database, what it is waiting for, why the log file is not been truncated. And if you see execute F5 and you see that database is waiting for availability replica, right? So if you see other databases which are in nothing, if you see other databases are on nothing, and that is where your transaction log file will be truncated. That is where your transaction log file will be truncated, and whereas you see that the log file utilization percentage is very less comparatively. Okay, so log file utilization percentage is less because it is not waiting for anything. Whereas if you see that availability replica for this database, and the log file will not be truncated until we get rid of this availability replica state. Okay, so now we identified that it is waiting for availability replica. So what is availability replica? Availability replica in a high level, primary generated some transactions, secondary is not able to receive the data. Okay, in a simple term, primary has some data, whereas secondary is not received the data, or secondary is not able to receive the data due to some reason, due to XYZ reasons. Either it could be a network issue, or it could be a disk issue, or it could be a replica state issue. Whatever reason, secondary is not accepting the data which is generated by the primary, right? So that until the data is available on the secondary, primary log file will be keep on waiting for the data to be replicated on the secondary. If secondary is not, if the data is not replicated to the secondary, then primary log file will not be truncated. So primary log file will not be truncated, right? So that is the reason it is waiting for availability replica. Now let's understand what is the current status of my secondary. So that's what I was telling, right? If secondary is not taking the data or not receiving the data, or secondary is not available, then my transaction log file on the primary would not be truncated. So until and unless the log file is truncated, your log file is keep on increasing. So how to get rid of this issue? If it is impacting production impacting, my personal suggestion is to remove the database from the availability group. First, fix that issue by just remove the database from the availability group. If you remove the database from the availability group, immediately the database should be truncated, right? So once you remove the database from the availability group, then it is not waiting for availability replica. It is not part of always on, then it will not wait for availability replica. The transaction log file will be truncated without any issue. If it is waiting for any log backup or any other waiters, that should be fixed. That is not an issue. Now, let's say it is not impacting your production, whatever reason, you will have to fix that issue. Let's understand what it is waiting for, what exactly is going on at the secondary server. Now, if you expand the availability replicas, and if you see that secondary is in disconnected state, where we can see that secondary is in disconnected state, right? Since the secondary is not online or secondary is not reachable, so we see that the database on the primary is bloating and the log file on the primary is keep on increasing, which are not able to truncate the transaction log file and waiting for availability replica. Now we understand the issue. What is the issue? The issue is secondary is not available, due to which the transactions on the primary is keep on increasing, which is causing the log file full, right? Now let's go ahead and see why it is in disconnected state. How you will troubleshoot? First, you will have to check whether you are able to connect, at least, right? You are able to connect using the server, right? So you're not able to connect. Let's go ahead and connect to the remote machine. I mean, directly RDP to the server. You're not able to connect. Okay. Let's RDP to the server. Node 2. I have RDP to node 2. This is node 2. And if you see that the SQL services on node 2 is on stop state, right? SQL services on node 2 are in stop state. Now, okay, I understand that the issue is, the problem is the databases on the primary, the log file on the primary is full due to secondary not available. Secondary is not available. The reason is the services on the secondary is in stop state. These two scenarios I'm pretty clear. First thing, the log file is full because secondary is not available. Secondary is not available because secondary SQL services on secondary node is down, right? The SQL service is down on secondary server. Okay, two scenarios I understood. Now let's go ahead and start the SQL service and see. Okay, secondary services are started. Now let's refresh here. Okay, refresh. Okay, see here, it is stopping, like it is not started. And if you start it again, okay, it says running, but let's refresh. It is stopping, right? So it is frequently so stopping the service on its own. It is not stable, right? The SQL service on node 2 is not stable. This is the reason the availability replica is down, because the SQL service is not stable, and that is the reason availability replica we see there is down. And because of that, log file is full, right? We understood three. One is log file is full because of availability replica. Availability replica because secondary services are down. Third one is secondary services we are trying to start and it is not starting up. It is not stable. The services are not stable. Now, what I'll have to do? Of course, I'll have to go through the SQL error logs to identify why this is not starting up. Again, let's start it. Okay, let's see if I can connect to node 2. This is just a trying to see if I'm able to connect. Still, I'm unable to connect, definitely. And if I refresh here, the service is in stop state, right? The problem here is the SQL services is not stable. It is keep on stopping on its own. Now let's go ahead and see the SQL error log. How to identify the SQL error log location? So you will have to go to the configuration manager, SQL Server configuration manager, whereas you will have to go to the properties of the service, SQL Server service, and you have something called startup parameters. If you see that error logs minus e parameter, this is where you can find the SQL error log location. Go here and open that location and see that SQL error log here, right? The recent error log is this. This is at 12:30 local time, 12:30 p.m. And if I open that error log, and we will have to understand what is going on and why the database, the SQL service is not starting up. Okay, let's scroll down. Maybe scroll down to the bottom. This is where the services are not or keep on stopping. And if you see here, there is an insufficient system memory in resource pool internal. It says that there is a insufficient system memory to run a query. So query is nothing but whenever you start the SQL service, it says like internal, right? It says internal as in like it is trying to start the service that needs some internal memory to start. It is not an external or it is not a user query, right? It is just a SQL service we are starting and it needs some memory to start up and it is failing, right? And you see here, there is a memory dump generated in the SQL error logs as well, right? So this is the memory dump generated. It seems like based on this memory dump, there is a memory issue, right? SQL service is not stable because of some memory issue. We understand because we see memory dump has been generated in the SQL error log. Let's see when this memory dump has started. The first message of the memory dump. I'm scrolling all the way up. Let's see when the memory dump has started. Now here. So 12:30, exactly at 2 minutes back, couple of minutes back. and transactions are rolled forward in the database. Okay, and distributed whatever database it is. Fail to allocate. Okay, so fail to allocate, fail page allocation is 1. What does it mean? Failed page allocation, it is trying to allocate one page per startup and it is failed to allocate, right? It says that it needs one page. However, due to some memory pressure or due to memory pressure, we would SQL couldn't allocate one page to startup. All right, this is where you see that performance counter, I mean memory information, right? If you see here, system physical memory high, it says that system physical memory is high. So we have enough memory at the Windows level, right? RAM, we have enough memory. Whereas process physical memory low, it says that process physical memory, right? What is that process? SQL Server. SQL Server memory allocation is low, right? It says that system physical memory is high and process memory is low. So SQL Server memory is very low. It doesn't have, SQL Server doesn't have enough memory to allocate a page, single page. But physical memory is high. How much physical memory we have? This is where you can tell. Available physical memory. This is in bytes, and if you convert this into byte, KB, MB, GB, whatever it is, this is in bytes, KB, MB, GB. Around 4 gigs of memory we have at the physical level. 4 GB memory available, right? But process physical memory is very low. Now, let's understand that what is the SQL memory which is committed, right? So these two are the memory counters. I will explain in detail in another video for the memory, so how this will be calculated and how to read DBCC memory status output. But here you just understand, so what is the SQL memory allocation? That's it. And if you see that these two performance counters are very important, it tells that what is the memory which is allocated to the SQL Server, what is the memory which is currently consumed by the SQL Server. Target memory, you can consider this as a max server memory. This is your current committed memory. Okay. Or total server memory. This you can consider as target server memory, right? So this is where your max server memory, and this is your current committed memory. Okay, current committed is nothing but how much memory you have allocated to the SQL Server and how much memory is currently committed out of it, right? So what is the memory I allocated to the SQL Server is 156 MB, out of which how much memory actually committed? I have committed 149 MB, almost committed, but it needs more memory than available to log into the server or start up the services. Okay, 153 MB is very low, in fact, right? So SQL is just utilizing 153 MB. SQL Server max server memory is configured around 153, whatever it is. Target committed is 153 MB. Because of that, SQL doesn't have enough memory to start up. Now, we understand the problem. What is the problem? SQL service is not starting up. SQL service is not starting up because we don't have enough memory to start the services, right? How you identify that there is no enough memory at the SQL Server? So we reviewed the SQL Server error log. In SQL Server error logs, it generated a memory dump, right? DBCC memory status dump. From there, we noticed we have enough physical memory. However, we don't have a memory for SQL service. Process memory is very low. That is where we have it here, right? Process memory is low. So now we jump into the process, individual process. That is where it starts from the memory manager to identify how much memory we allocated for this process. This is where the target committed comes into. Target committed is nothing but, in a high level, target committed is nothing but like how much max SQL Server can go and commit, right? How much max SQL Server can commit, right? Current committed is how much is SQL Server currently committed. These are the two important things. Like target committed is, for example, if the target committed is 10 gigs, then SQL Server can grow up to 10 gigs and can commit up to 10 GB of memory. So in this scenario, target committed is 153 MB. So max SQL can go up to 153 MB, but it's stuck here 149 MB, whereas it needs more memory to start the services. Right. Now, another important one is physical memory, this one. Right. So if you see that the process last out of memory factor is 1, right? So they like it also indicates that there is an out of memory exception or factor where we can see 1. Now, I no need to verify anything because I see that the target committed is an issue here because we have only 153 MB is utilized by the SQL Server, though we have around 4 GB of RAM available on the physical machine. So how to fix it? I can go ahead and increase the memory to SQL Server. If I increase the memory to SQL Server, then my SQL Server can utilize the memory available on the physical system. Now, we know the fix as well, right? We know the fix as well. But how to fix that issue? How to allocate memory to SQL Server? So the way that we know, we can go ahead and connect to the SQL Server and execute sp configure and max server memory, right? So that we know. But now in this scenario, we would not be able to connect to the server, right? So we would not be able to connect to the SQL service. In fact, like we would not be able to start the services. In that scenario, how you will allocate memory to the SQL server? That is where you have something called minimal configuration mode, right? What is that minimal configuration mode? So you can start the services with a minimal configuration mode so that SQL service would be SQL service would be started with a minimum memory available, right? Whatever minimum memory available to start the services will be started with minimum configurations. Let's see how to start the services with a minimal configuration mode, right? So open a command prompt as an administrator. Now I will have to start the SQL services. How to start the SQL service from the command prompt? Net start MS SQL Server if it is a default, otherwise named instance MS SQL dollar the instance name. Okay, net start MS SQL Server /f. /f is for minimal configuration mode. Remember, /f is for minimal configuration mode. Now, along with the minimal configuration mode, it is better to have a single user mode. Otherwise, just try this and see if that works. Like let's connect or start with a minimal configuration mode. Let's see. Okay. Seems the service is started with a minimal configuration mode. Let's refresh here. Right. So I am refreshing, keep on refreshing. It is in start state. Okay, cancel. Okay, it is in running. Now let's connect SQL Server. How you will connect? Let's connect using the SQL CMD. SQL CMD. The server is a single user mode. Only one administrator can connect at the time. It says that as soon as you start SQL service in a single, minimal configuration mode, it assumes that it is in a single user mode, and you would not be able to open a connection. So let's stop the service. MS SQL Server, exit. 1 second. Let me see if I have open any connection. Close it. Okay, let's start MS SQL Server /app minimal configuration and /m. /m is for single user mode, right? I am starting the SQL service using a /f. It is a minimal configuration mode, so that if you have a minimum resources, it will be started with that, and /m for a single user mode, and I will be using SQL CMD along with that, so that I'm telling that I'm starting and going to connect using the SQL CMD mode, right? So I am starting the services. Now let's connect to SQL Server. How you will connect? Using the SQL CMD. If it is default instance, you can just type SQL CMD and hit enter. Otherwise, you will have to provide that server name using -s parameter. Okay, this is a default instance. I'm using SQL CMD, hit enter. Right, I'm good. So I have connected to the SQL Server. Now let's understand the configuration. What we have here, which configuration? What is the memory configuration? sp underscore configure max server memory MB, right? I think this is the query, max server memory, and you'll have to hit go. Okay, the configuration of max server memory. Okay, let's see. Space max server memory, right? And if you see here, okay, 1 second. Okay, 110. Right. So if you see here, right. So if you see here, max server memory is 128 is the minimum, right? And maximum is whatever it is. And if you see that configured value is 150 MB. This is in MB, and configured value is 150 MB, right? The configuration max server memory is 150 MB. So this is the reason that we see only 150 MB or 153 MB. This is in KB, right? So if you convert this by divided by 1024, you will see that 150 only, right? So the reason the SQL is not able to start is this configuration. Now you can change this configuration using sp underscore configure max server memory MB comma 1750, whatever it is. So I want to configure, I'm configuring this. Configure option, I can change it from 150 to 1750, 1.7 gigs. Run the reconfigure statement to install, right? So run reconfigure. Cool, go. Now that I have done max server memory configuration, let's validate sp underscore configure max server memory in MB value. Go. Okay, 1 second. Max server memory sp underscore configure max memory. What happened? I don't know. Okay, sp underscore configure max server memory, and if you execute, okay, okay. So I think the advanced option is disabled for some reason. Okay, let's enable this advanced option. Okay, sp underscore configure show advanced option comma 1 reconfigure sp underscore configure, and if you use max server memory, then you should get that max server memory value. Sp underscore configure and go. Show advanced option maximum. Okay, sp underscore configure show advanced option comma 1 go. Okay, I think I configure rather than change it from. Okay, reconfigure go. Sp underscore configure go. Okay, so now you should see all the options because some reason the advanced option has been disabled. And if you scroll down, let's filter only one. Sorry, it is not command prompt. Okay, sp underscore command configure max server memory in MB. If I see here, configured value is 1750, right? So 1750. Now I am good. Let's exit from this command SQL CMD mode and stop the SQL service because I started using the single user mode and minimal configuration. So let's stop the SQL service. Let's stop MS SQL Server. Now let's start MS SQL Server. Right, I'm starting without any minimal configuration. Now the SQL service is started. You can see here the SQL service is started. And if you try to connect the SQL service to, you should be able to connect. Right. So I am able to connect. Now let's refresh availability replicas on the primary and see the status is showing as connected. And let's execute these two. And if you see here, log backup, right? So you still see a waiting for log backup. Let's take a log backup. Okay, backup log to disk equal to whatever backup. I don't need any. Okay, I have taken a log backup to a null device. And if I execute, the value should be reduced like 82%. As soon as it is completed, then we should see it is from log backup to mostly nothing. Okay, let's see why it is waiting for this much time. Sys dot. Okay, I think it is done. Okay, this is completed. And if you execute again, see here, the database status is showing us nothing. Now the log file utilization should be dropped to whatever it is. So this is fine because log file utilization is showing us nothing now. So it should not be waiting for any logs, right? So if I take a log backup again, e dot trn, okay, so maybe that is the reason, like I have taken a log backup with null device. That is the reason that well is not truncated, but yeah, that should be fine, right? Until and unless I have issue, so maybe this log file is doesn't have enough space to truncate, right? So this log file, no, so never mind. So the log, this is fine because we see that the database status is showing us nothing, and until and unless it is showing some other wait type, some other wait resource, then we are good here. Okay, let's see. Okay, cool. So that is how we have to investigate and fix the issue. So don't worry about whatever the log space uses. So that should be fine. It will be reutilized whenever we perform a high transactions. Whenever we do any transactions, the log space will be utilized and adjust, because we see that nothing here. So the log file will be truncated as per from the database as per the internal activity, so it will be truncated. So we no need to worry about this utilization log space usage percentage, right? So if we here we see that nothing, so it should be able to truncate that log file. Okay, that's it. So I will post more videos. Keep watching. Thanks for your time. Have a nice day. Bye bye.